Hello. I wanted to talk today about this whole 2 or 3 years that we've been working with video more than ever before, for obvious reasons, and how that has affected our relationships and our sense of reality. And obviously reality can be whatever you decide it to be. And I was just thinking about how we we observe things, right? There's something, someone, our consciousness, a seat of consciousness sitting inside of us observing everything, right? And how is all this created? Well, you know, the stars and the moons and everything, it's all been created through the cosmos, through the elements. Certain elements do certain things, and you know, how the earth was created was out of that, from the stars, basically. And what is our reality when we're looking out at all of this that has been created by that? Because everything that's here, including us, right, has been created by that. And so this whole video thing, what is really real? How can you put your tangible hand on it, or tangible mind on it, maybe, is a better way of looking at it. And so I guess the objective here for me was for myself, especially myself, to surrender to everything that's going on around me. And I guess I've thought of these kinds of things in the past, just to surrender and not clinch is the word I think of, clinch on to things so hard, but to be open-minded, to be able to have information, new information come in on a subject that you may feel like you already know about. And it can change your life. So for me, in regards to the financial whole life, participating whole life with mutual insurance companies, this all happened by my openness to something that showed up in my life, which was an invitation to go down to St. Augustine and be with this group down there, and they were going to show us how to become our own bankers. And after that experience, I was like, oh, I got to really seriously look into this. And so because I am very much an investigative mind, I'm curious, I'm always learning, all that kind of stuff. I dug deeper into it. I talked to friends that I felt were, well, economists and things like that. And quickly did I find the Nelson Nash Institute. And then I was introduced to the board, you know, Bob Murphy, Dave Stearns, Carlos Laura. Nelson had passed by the time I got there, so I didn't have the good fortune of meeting him personally, but certainly through videos he's still with us, and his work in the text area, meaning books. And so if I had not been open to this trip, which I had to spend money to go there, and really I didn't feel like I had it, you know. So through listening and being open and not holding on so tight to that whole monetary thing, which is very real, I said I'm going to go. And it has really changed the course of my life. And so today I wanted to share another story of a person that made a decision. He made a decision to go out on a date. And that person, turns out, led him down this particular path. And he had the good fortune of making the decision to get married to this young lady. And so I'm only asking you to keep an open mind, to let information in, to surrender to stuff that comes to you that may feel, right? Our senses are the gauge, the compass to whatever it is that we're observing. You know, if I look at this window over here, if I look at the things behind me, there's a certain visceral feeling, thought, sound, touch, texture. You have a reaction to it. So if somebody approaches you about the infinite banking concept or skydiving, whatever it might be, keep an open mind about the possibilities, because the possibilities are endless. So really, I'm asking you just to surrender and dig deep into this information. So with that, I want to introduce you to David Stearns, who is the president of the Nelson Nash Institute. The young lady I'm referencing that he married was Nelson's daughter, and I'll let him explain it all in this next video if you'll take the time to listen to it. It's not terribly long, and I was fortunate enough to have David on and spend the time with me. And with that, no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my interview with David. Thank you very much for listening. We'll catch you next time. Well, thank you, David, for taking the time to do this. And I feel honored that you'd take the time to talk to me about this. But I wanted to ask you about your experience in all of this, since many, many years ago, this story starts for you. Right. While you were in the Navy or Air Force?
No. You're 2 out of 3 ain't bad, but you missed up both of them.
Army.
Yeah.
Army.
I ended up being in the Army for 27 years. Okay, so I retired in 2004 as Lieutenant Colonel. My plan was to retire in 2000, but we had an opportunity to move back to Birmingham, where my wife Kim is from, and so instead of retiring in Atlanta, Georgia, we opted to take a PCS move, a permanent change of station, move back to Birmingham for a job. And it was, basically just to get us back here. And then after 1 year, I retire, and then we transitioned to whatever I was going to do after the Army. Well, we all know what happened in 9/11, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that kind of like put a screeching halt to any retirement move. So I ended up staying in, 4 years instead of 1 additional year. So that's how I ended up in Birmingham. But yeah, I was an Army guy for years. And, my father was a retired Lieutenant Colonel. He was, he was enlisted in 1945 and actually ended up in Europe after the war ended. But he's got pictures of him wearing his Eisenhower, Class B uniform, walking around Germany with a camera, not with a gun, with a camera. Mm-hmm. But then he got out and went to ROTC college, and then he was a reservist, and Korean War popped up. So they called him to active duty in the Korean War. And my father was supposed to go to Korea as a second lieutenant forward observer for the field artillery. And, life expectancy for forward observers wasn't too long, especially in the Korean War or any war. But before he actually deployed, they changed his orders. And instead of going to Korea, he went to Germany. Okay, in 1951, which was, 1951 American occupation of Germany. There, you're king of the mountain. Okay, so anyway, he spent 3 years over there, and that's where I was born in Germany in 1953. So I was whatever. Anyway. So that's how so Army is kind of in my blood, my background. And that kind of led me to how I met Kim and how I met Nelson Nash. Okay. I was stationed in Hawaii with the 25th Infantry Division in 1979. And I sponsored a guy named Barry Nash into our artillery unit. Back then, the Army and most of the military organizations back then were more people oriented, because we didn't have all these different technological networks and whatnot. So you really kind of took care of each other. And so anyway, I was told by the commander that, hey, we got this lieutenant coming into the unit. You're going to be a sponsor. Here's his address, write him a letter and get to know him and help him out and get, transition to the unit in the Army and whatnot. So I wrote Barry Nash a letter and said, hey, this is where you're coming. This is who I am. This is the job you're going to have. This is, I'll pick you up at the airport. Just tell me when you're flying in. I'll get you someplace to live and blah, 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 blah. And then, and so we became friends because, he was a new guy on the block. So we spent, I guess, about 3 or 4 months together. And then we went to Korea for an exercise. And he kept telling me, hey, my sister's going to come to Hawaii and visit when we get back from Korea. I want you to meet her. I said, no, that never works out. No. Anyway, he kept hounding me. Finally, he coordinated a meeting. So we met and we kind of hit it off. And so, we started dating and whatever. And so Kim was in Hawaii. She was staying with her brother, Barry. And I'd swing it every now and then. We'd be dating and whatnot and doing our thing. And Hawaii was pretty nice, of course. Anyway, things got kind of heated and whatever. And so I proposed to her, wanted to get married. And, I was not a refined individual. So I didn't even think about asking her father for her hand in marriage. Her father was in Birmingham, Alabama. We were in Schofield Barracks, Hawaii. I asked her to marry me, and she said, yeah. And then Barry said, okay, I'll call Dad up and I'll smooth it over for you. And so he called, and then Kim talked to him, and then I talked to him briefly, but I never met the guy. And so we got married on August 11th in 1979. And I met Kim's and Barry's father, a guy named Nelson Nash, on the 9th of August in 1979. So I met him 2 days before the wedding. We picked him up at the airport.
Wow.
And I shook his hand, shook my hand, and we, exchanged pleasantries, and everything was good. He said, we need to talk.
What's that? He said what?
He said, we need to talk.
Oh,
It's
did
like-
Barry smooth it over well for you?
Well, no, Barry was, by then it was like, damage control on my part. It was up to me to figure out how to do this thing. Of course,
Yeah.
Nelson was a Southern gentleman from Athens, Georgia. He married his, Mary, who's from Athens, Georgia. They're really Southern folks. And I spent a lot of time in the South as a military dependent, but I was essentially a Yankee. Okay, both my parents are from the Northeast. And that's where I ended up going to high school and college. And so I wasn't really into the Southern, marriage ritual and whatnot. But anyway, so after we got Nelson back, we set him up in a nice, place on the North Shore of Hawaii, he and his wife. And I guess Kim's grandparents came over also. Anyway, we set him up in a place, and then he pulled me aside and he said, hey, let's sit down and we sat down. He opens up his briefcase. He takes out some paperwork and puts it down in front of me and said, he goes, okay, I want you to sign here and here.
Wait, you
It was
weren't
like-
marrying him.
I was like, I didn't know what it was. I knew that he was a life insurance agent. He worked for Equitable Life back then in 1979.
Yeah.
And he was a top producer for them. But it was like, I was so friggin' nervous that, I would have signed anything. And so it was a whole life insurance policy is what it was. So I signed it. Yep. Of course, my future bride was the beneficiary. I was the insured. Even though I was an active military, I had to, he figured out how to get around that. And so that was my first exposure to Nelson Nash. Okay. We had about an hour together before I bought my first policy.
Oh, geez.
Right, 79. So anyway, that's how I guess everything with me with IBC is essentially it was just like fate. I had nothing to do with it, I don't think. Okay.
Yeah.
Because so 79, that's how I get started, and then Kim and I ended up having in the book, Nelson talks about his granddaughter who had cancer. Okay, that was my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
and she would, spent, her first year in surgeries and chemotherapies and whatnot, whatever. We took her to Triple Army Hospital down in Honolulu. Anyway, it just kept being prolonged. Finally, I told them, I said, stop. We're PCSing back to the United States, back to the mainland. And the doctor told me, he goes, if you take your daughter, you're killing her. It's like,
Whoa.
that was just, it was a thoracic surgeon said that. It wasn't her main oncologist. And it's like, something just told me, don't let this guy, operate on her anymore. Okay. So anyway, so we I was scheduled to leave in like a month. And so the guy said, okay, if you're going to leave, you got to leave like now. That's how critical we think this is. It's like, you got to create this, what? And we had been coordinating with UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham Children's Hospital, while we're in Hawaii, and our oncologists have been going back and forth with them also. And so they were waiting for us when we got on that airplane with our daughter and left. We flew directly to Birmingham, and we basically went right to the hospital with all our stuff. And anyway, 24 hours later, said, your daughter doesn't need surgery.
Oh,
Wow. Okay. You need to bring her up here every month for follow-up, but she doesn't need surgery. And so I was down in Fort Rucker going to flight school. And so Kim would drive my daughter up from Fort Rucker up to Birmingham once a month. And then usually the appointment was on a Friday, and she'd spend the weekend with her parents or whatever and go back down. So anyway, that's kind of how we had a Birmingham connection there. And anyway,
yep.
When I came back to Birmingham in 2000 to retire, my intent was not to work with Nelson. Okay. I didn't really know what I was going to do, but becoming your own banker in IBC was not an entity like it is now in 2000. Nelson was doing seminars.
What was it? How was it different?
It was part of Nelson's practice. He was an insurance sales guy, and he was with Guardian at that time. Equitable demutualized back in '92, so he quit Equitable and signed on with Guardian Life. And so all this, IBC was how he did business in his personal business.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Okay, he learned his. The book talks about him, being in financial crisis, back in like 1987, 88.
Yeah.
And so he learned how to do it. Yeah, he learned how to get out of debt, transferring, third-party debt into a policy construct debt himself. And so he kept learning how to do it better and changing and modifying and growing. So it became part of his practice. And so, and people and folks said, this is interesting. How you doing this? So he started doing seminars in Birmingham, like once a month he'd do one. And he'd invite people to come to it. And he'd invite like 20 people to come to it. Maybe 10 would say, yeah, I'll be there. And maybe 3 or 4 would show up. But he refined the seminar over time. And then he had notes, and he had VGTs. You know what those are?
No.
The VGT is a transparency you put on an overhead projector, like in the classroom.
Oh, yeah.
So he didn't have PowerPoint. He had a box of these, VGT slides. And they're all just stacked up. You just throw them on the overhead and do a seminar. And so
wow.
I went to the seminar. After we came to Birmingham in 2000, I went to the seminar. I said, you need to do a PowerPoints instead of these flimsies. And so he said, okay, help me out with that. So we went out and bought him a laptop computer. I did all those PowerPoints. I did them for him or whatever. And we just modified all that. And then he took all his notes and stuff and and collated them into his own book for his seminars. And somebody said, hey, you need to publish that, because you can't do seminars forever. And he goes, okay, I think I'll do that. So he did it. In 2000, he published that, the black book.
Right.
And then after I started in the PowerPoints for him, and I do stuff for him all the time. I was helping him set up his computer for him, helping with his website, did all this stuff for him. And then he kept saying, I'm selling these books. I need help. Because when he got a book order, it's typically somebody would call him and say, hey, Nelson, send me 10 books. He'd be talking to this guy for 15, 20 minutes for an hour. Okay, great. Thanks for the order. Really appreciate it. And he'd write down all the information and type up a receipt. And I mean, it took him forever to do it, because he was always a personal individual. He wanted to talk to everybody and get to know him. And so finally, he get 2001, he said, you need to get out and help me with this thing. I said, I can't. I'm too busy with, everything's going on with the military. And so 2002, same thing, 3, and finally 2004, he says, you've got to help me. I said, okay, fine. So I retired. And by then, the book had been established in 2004.
Yeah.
And his seminars, he was doing like 40 seminars a year, and they're all out of state.
Wow.
He traveled all over the country, Canada, and do his 10-hour seminar. And so when I went in there, I basically kind of, formalized the business, so we could track sales and everything, streamline all that stuff and and anyway, so I started off doing that, and then I, started doing everything else too. And then I think 2008 or 9, basically I took over all the copyrights and the trademarks, and created,
Who did?
a robust
Who took over?
website.
Who took over those?
I did, yeah.
Oh, you did. You took over
Yeah.
all of
I
it.
took over all that stuff like that, and he signed them all over to me, in, I think it was 2009, and I was paying royalties on all the products that we sold. Every month I just give him a royalty report and a check. And
Wow.
you see, obviously, we got to the point where all Nelson did was do seminars and speaking engagements, and just coach people and talk to them. And I managed everything behind the scenes for him.
Yeah. Which you still do.
Well, yeah. There's 3 of us now. There's Bob Murphy, Carlos Lara, and myself. And there's 4 of us before.
Yes.
The 4 of us, we created the course, the IBC Practitioner course, in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And back then we called the institute the Infinite Banking Institute, but that sounded weird. It sounded like, a formal commercial retail bank.
Yeah.
And so somebody said, if you're trying to honor Nelson Nash, why don't you just call it the Nelson Nash Institute? And it's like, boy, I wish I'd have thought of that. One of those Wheatie commercials. Oh, gee, give me another V8. But yeah. So we called it, the Nelson Nash Institute.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what administered the training program, the Authorized Practitioner Program.
Right.
So Bob Murphy, Nelson did all his content, Murphy did content, and Carlos did content, and Bob Murphy was a PhD economist, and he also taught at the college level.
Right.
Know how to do all that stuff. So he basically put it all together into a course.
Yes.
So he wrote the course manual for us, did all the tests for us, all that stuff like that. And then I'm the one, and I set everything up. I got everything set online and ready to go and whatever. And so the course has been going since February of 2013.
Mm.
So that's kind of what we do. And we try to, even though the course is for financial professionals, the institute and the website is directed towards the consumer, okay, the general public.
Right.
We're trying to provide the general public with facts, okay? Nothing sensational, nothing outlandish. This is too good to be true stuff. Like, you hear all kinds of stuff out there on YouTube land and all over the place.
Yeah.
Life insurance is not free, okay? And the insurance companies, the mutual companies specifically, they have to cover their obligations. They have to make money. And yeah, dividends are paid every year typically, but it's hard work. IBC is hard work. Okay.
Yes.
And it's not something you can just snap your fingers and get one of those now. You have to really understand how to do it. And you have to be committed for long-term investments / premium payments, loan repayments,
Yeah.
Probably
The tougher thing is the loan repayments.
Yeah. No, I mean, Nelson, he had five truths about IBC, five, important, aspects of it. And one of them was don't steal the peas, because, he talked about, the grocery store
Yeah.
in the book, and stealing the peas is not being an honest banker, quote unquote. Okay.
Paying yourself back.
Paying yourself back. Okay. Or even in my mind, okay, this is, when I get calls from people and they tell me, well, what are your takeaways for IBC? And I say, don't take out a policy loan unless you can afford to pay it back. Yeah, if you have an emergency, or if you have a financial hardship, or if you have all that stuff like that, then you can, are you still there?
Yep. I'm still.
Okay, I can't see you anymore, but that's okay.
Oh.
If you have a financial hardship, then yeah, fine. You don't pay it back, but so what? You can defer the payment for, until you get back on your feet. But I said, five things. Number one is don't steal the peas, i.e., don't take a loan if you can't pay it back on certain terms. Okay.
Yeah.
The second thing is, think long range, because a big YouTubeism nowadays is to buy a policy with as much cash surrender value as you can get in it on day one, and then limit your payment schedule to 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 years for your premiums, which is, in my mind, crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's not building a solid foundation under the policy.
No, it's not. It's
Yeah.
the longer, in my mind, and this is me talking personally, I don't have an insurance license. That I don't sell life insurance. But I do use it extensively in the family, and to my mind, the policy for me, and the way Nelson taught me how to do this, is you get the longest paid policy that you can get.
Yeah, David. There's the recording. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I couldn't see it.
Okay. So so 10 pays out there, no 10 pays, nope. Okay.
Long
Life
term.
paid up.
Everything is long-term thinking.
Everything is long-term thinking. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes you can't do it. You can't get it through underwriting, or whatever. But, long-term thinking, because he said, don't be afraid to capitalize, was another one of his precepts. Okay. Capitalization is paying premium.
Right.
And so you don't want to pay premiums for 10 years. You want to pay premiums for 120 years. Okay. Or 100 or 65 or whatever the construct is. Okay. And because the more premium you pay, the more growth potential you have, the bigger, cash surrender value base you're going to have.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So can I ask you, how has the growth been for NNI since 2013?
It's been steady. It really has been. The worse the economy gets, the better off IBC is. And when Nelson first started, he had to defend, permanent whole life insurance. Okay, because it had such a bad reputation, and he had to defend IBC because people thought he was crazy. Nowadays, we don't have to do that. Okay, you just have to make sure that that IBC is explained correctly, and that the potential client is educating themselves, understanding and taking ownership of it themselves. Because you can't force feed this.
Right.
So so it's more accepted than it ever has been, and there's so much more content than there ever has been out there, and so it's definitely growing. It's growing exponentially.
You recently had your annual think tank, and we had put it off. Was it 1 year or 2 years because of the?
We did a virtual think tank in February of 2021, virtual. Yeah. but we had a live one again in February of 22. So we only missed one live event. So
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So people can go, the general public can go to Nelson Nash, NNI.org and find these books. And I'll just mention that, yes, Nelson's first book was this one.
right.
The ones that you put all the notes together and made this book.
Yeah, that was his 10-hour seminar, and that was his seminar notes built that thing out.
Yeah. And then he was part of, well, he did this one, the Where
That
Else?
was the second book, yeah.
Yeah. And so all these books can be found on the website, right?
Yeah, the Nelson Nash Institute, which is the URL is infinitebanking.org or infinitebanking.com. Both of them direct to that site.
We can put that into the show notes. And then there was this book also that the three, Carlos and Nelson and Bob Murphy wrote together.
Right. Yeah. The case for IBC, that was the last seminar that we did with Nelson, that book. So that seminar, that was, we kind of incorporated the four of us together, and so that's how that was the seminar. So
interesting. Yeah, and then Bob and Carlos wrote this book together,
right,
which is another one. So all of those books, and the weekend seminar, people can buy the video to watch that. It's like 6.5, 7 hours.
Yeah, we recorded Nelson like 4 or 5 times, and we do sell the DVDs, 3 DVDs on the website. This Nelson doing his seminar. That's what it is, and we're getting ready to have it, just MP4 files on the website. So instead of buying DVDs and trying to find something to play them with, people will be able to buy a subscription to the seminar online. So they all have to do is sign to the website, and they can watch it as many times as they want to without having to have hard discs to play. So that should be available in about a month.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask was, what are you working on now, to get the word out even more?
Yeah. Well, we did the Foundations of IBC video series last year, and that's resident on the website. And the latest thing, Bob Murphy and Carlos Lara did a podcast for years, and it was outstanding. And then Carlos had a stroke a couple of years ago, and he's fully recovered now. But they're with all different competing things going on in everybody's life, they just never completed new podcasts until last week. So the big thing now is we're working on getting a podcast out, Laura Murphy Report podcast out every week or every other week. Okay, so the first one, episode 81, was posted last week on the website, and Laura Murphy Report is resident on the Nelson Nash Institute website now. So that is full steam ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. That was something that I was pushing for personally too, because I love that their podcast.
Yes, I've listened to it a number of times. It's great. Yeah. Anything else you think would be helpful to the general public?
Well, I talked about the Practitioner Program, and
how does somebody get involved in that? Like if there's an agent, or even if there isn't an agent, they aren't licensed, they have to get their license first, and then they can go through your program?
The program is for licensed insurance agents, because we want individuals who complete the course, who have been mentored, who have been trained, who have a listing on our website as an authorized practitioner, to be able to service any prospect that calls them through the website. If they're not contracted with an insurance carrier and licensed in their state of residence, they can't do that. So somebody wants to be a practitioner, they have to be an active life licensed, and they apply for the course with the application process. We interview them via Zoom, and they're accepted or they're not accepted. And we're looking for people who are like-minded, is what we're really looking for. People who want to get involved in what we're doing. They believe in Nelson's vision about personal finances. Okay, just as I explained in the book. And you showed the book How Privatized Banking Really Works by Carlos and Bob. That talks about the Austrian school of thought with the business cycle, and it talks about inflationary practices with the Federal Reserve, and borrowing money from commercial retail banks. Okay, so Nelson talked about the family and about the business. Carlos and Bob brought the national economics twist to it, so they consolidated both those together. And so we want practitioners who understand economics from an Austrian perspective. They understand that if somebody does IBC in their household, not only are they're increasing their wealth in controlling the flow of money, keeping that money within their sphere of influence, but marginally they're also fighting the big battle. Okay, the inflationary practices of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
And so we want people that number one understand that, and they want to get on board. There's, some folks just want to sell insurance and they want to get as many leads as they can. Well, those are the folks who we're looking for. Okay, so if somebody's accepting the program, we think that's where their head is, and they complete the academic phase, take a final examination that's proctored, and then if they're experienced, then we let them join as members and be listed on the website. If they're not that experienced, then we have one of our practitioner mentors work with them on live cases, so we feel assured that they know what they're doing. They can represent us in the best means possible.
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed about being part of that is that many of the practitioners, if you reach out to them, even beyond getting on the website and all that, they will help. They're very, very supportive of each other.
Well, you mentioned a think tank before. Okay, that's, we did it in February 2022, the last one we had. The intent of the think tank is to bring practitioners together in one room so they can get to know each other. And 90% of the presentations that are done at the think tank are done by practitioners.
Yeah.
Because we want those individuals to share best practices. Okay. We don't bring in guest speakers. Somebody talk about motivational speaking, somebody talk about ClickFunnels, somebody talk about real estate investments. We want our practitioner membership to get to know each other, and so, and also promote the ones that are doing things well. And so the idea is, like you said, that they're not as competitive in the sales industry as some producers are. They're more acceptable to working with each other and helping everybody out that's involved in IBC. Yeah,
there's a lot of collaboration that goes on,
right?
Which is, in my estimation, I think that's a much better way to build a practice, because you can help the client so much more.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, some of these guys have expertise in, real estate and using IBC as a cash flow management tool. Some folks, work with farmers, and share that expertise with any other practitioner who's got a case that might benefit from that expertise.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Well, I think that's about all I had in terms of questions. You just about covered them all, David.
No, well, I just, I said before, I'm not an insurance agent. And when I first started working with Nelson in 2004, we agreed that I would not become licensed and contracted because he wanted me to focus on, the business side. And then he also wanted me to focus on the consumer side and approach this as a consumer client instead of a producer. He knew that I'd be chasing money if I was a producer. I'd be chasing commissions. And And so, I'm glad I never did. I mean, I took the testing and whatnot for insurance licensing, so I went to all those courses and whatnot, but I never, actually physically took the state examination. But so I approached this from a consumer side,
Yeah.
and I have to qualify that again without being licensed, because I'm going to give financial advice if I'm not, qualified to do that. But between my wife and I, we have 26 policies. They're all of them except for 2 are owned on family members, and we manage those policies, together. And I got 3 more are going to go into underwriting on grandchildren. And so, I mean, I approach it for, how do I handle policy loan repayments? Well, it took me a while to figure it out. And, of course, Nelson's there to help me, every step along the way. But, servicing a policy loan, it might be different between company A and company B. You got to know the carriers and whatnot. You have to understand that. But
Right.
so I look at it from a consumer. So when I talk to the general public, I don't talk insurance jargon to them. I talk about, okay, this is how I do it, and this is what I've learned, and these are the type of questions you need to be asking your advisor or practitioner, and this is what you should be focusing on. So
Yeah. So you have 3 more that you're going to write on grandchildren. So will that bring it to 29 then? You'll have 29.
It'll be 29. And every time I do one on a grandchild, then that grandchild's parents need to do one also. That's part of the deal. So there has to be 6 policies issued,
Yeah. But like Nelson said, it's a system of policies.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, David, thank you very much for your time. And I hope we get a chance to do this again sometime.
I enjoyed it.
Talk about some other things. Oh, and the other thing I should just mention too, is that there is a Canadian group of practitioners as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we probably per capita, we probably have just as many Canadian practitioners as we do in the United States. I mean, much less, but per capita is probably equal.
Yeah.
And the Canadians love IBC. I tell you what, it's different up there because their tax laws are different, and their companies' actuarial stuff is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But they love IBC in Canada. They really do. So.
Yeah, they get it. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, sir. And we'll
Ray. Thank you for having me. Have a great weekend.
Get out on that bike.
Okay. And watch out for cars, right?
Yeah. You're wearing a helmet.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, man.
We'll talk again soon.
Thanks.